on the launch of the NGC documents. Thereafterwards, I will hand over to Comrade Jeff to make a presentation on the different policy documents. Over to you, DSG.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The ANC is officially releasing our discussion documents for the forthcoming National General Council. These documents are intended to trigger discussions and debates around a broad range of issues that confront the country and the movement. We invite all South Africans to engage with these documents as part of sharpening policy positions, implementation and enriching public discourse on the building of a more inclusive, safe and just society. The Constitution of the ANC mandates the NEC to convene an NGC not later than 30 months after the National Conference. This means that the NEC should have convened the NGC by no later than June 2020. I might also say to you that it is not a compulsion in our Constitution. It says we may convene an NGC. With the onset of the COVID pandemic, the NGC preparations had to be reviewed, and the NEC took the view that the NGC could not take place within the prescribed time frame. In the context of the continuing impact of the COVID pandemic, the NEC is reflecting on the format of the NGC while ensuring that we realize its objectives and content. The NGC is a platform for the midterm review of the performance of the organization and an assessment of progress and challenges in implementing its policies and programs adopted and reaffirmed at the 54th National Conference. The NGC will also perform a review of the National Development Plan a decade ahead of its completion. It further seeks to assess the balance of forces as it prevails and their impact on the fundamental objectives of creating a better life for all South Africans. Over the years, the ANC National General Council has proved to be the biggest political school of the ANC, with nationwide and sectoral discussions of NGC papers taking place. This provides an opportunity for members and branches, including those that have no direct delegations to the NGC, to engage with implementation of policy and assess progress with transformation. This process sets the tone for the fruitful discussions at the NGC, enhance the quality of debates in the various commissions, and empower delegates to express their views with a greater degree of clarity and depth. The Leagues, Alliance, and broader mass democratic movement are being involved in this process. Furthermore, subcommittees of the NEC will continue to engage stakeholders such as the religious sector, professionals, intelligentsia, artists, business, sports, cultural communities, the LGBTQI community, and as broad a range of civil society as is possible. The tiniest finalization of discussion papers was adversely affected by the pandemic. It was, however, a blessing in disguise, as it provided an opportunity for greater reflection in the development of the discussion papers and consideration of the challenges and opportunities that have arisen due to the pandemic. The NEC Policy Subcommittee and relevant subcommittees have been meeting on virtual platforms since April 2020 to review and enhance the drafts of proposed discussion documents. We are pleased to announce that after months of hard work and a robust drafting process, the 10 discussion papers are being released for public discussion as a special edition of Umkhabulo that will be released online today. The NGC discussion documents are as follows: a discussion document on transformation and a prosperous South Africa, and we ask the critical question, is the NDR still on track? Social cohesion and the national and gender question, the balance of forces in our country, young people today, mission, challenges and tasks, building a non-sexist society, culture and heritage, strengthening linkages in ANC policy and strategic repositioning in the post-apartheid era. We are reviewing through the eye of the needle. Organizational renewal and unity is a separate paper on its own. Developing our human capabilities. And we're looking at South Africa's electoral systems in one of the discussion documents. And then we're also looking at a document that has been developed by the Alliance as a whole, which looks at a reconfigured alliance, a more integrated alliance. The discussion documents will also contribute towards enriching the content of the 2021 Local Government Elections Manifesto of the ANC. The novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is still very much part of our local and global reality. We will therefore have to continue to keep our communities, ourselves, and each other safe through social distancing, wearing masks, and abiding by the disaster regulations. The format of engagement on these documents will therefore be different, with as much decentralization and virtual engagements as possible. Slides, together with the simplified versions, will be made available to branches via the ANC's internal communication system, including the ANC cloud system, which I must say is very successful. Branches interact very regularly with the ANC through that system. ANC branches will be requested to set up mechanisms to discuss the papers involving all members and other local community and civil society structures. A mechanism for proposals and contributions from branches, members, and the public have been developed to receive feedback. We're really thinking about a whole series of webinars that will run throughout the country. ANC NEC subcommittees will convene virtual sectoral seminars with relevant stakeholders on discussion papers as well as media briefings. We will make all the chairpersons of our NEC subcommittees available to you to go into the granular detail of each and every paper so that you can understand the origin of the thoughts and where it's coming from, how it's been influenced, and what it is seeking to achieve. They will engage with the Alliance and MDM structures on all discussion papers. ANC provincial and regional structures will also meet virtually for discussions on the documents. May I thank you very much for your attention, and just to remind us all that we're a week away from the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. It should really be 365 days of activism, which is really the second pandemic that we're facing in this country. And it's a serious pandemic, and we hope that we will also find ways of overcoming this through both activism on the ground and legal methods. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pule.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, DSG. Comrade Jeff, are you now ready, Bongani, to come and present? Over to you.
Thank you, Comrade Pule. I want to recognize the Deputy Secretary General and also welcome the members of the media. As indicated, the National General Council is a forum of mid-term review for the organization. The NGC papers therefore set out to do exactly that, starting with the analysis of the balance of forces to look at what are the major trends, challenges, and opportunities since the 54th National Conference, so that we can understand the context and the environment in which we all operate. The papers that follow deal with key transformation issues such as economic transformation, social cohesion, culture and heritage, the national and gender question, the role of young people, the electoral system, and so forth, with a set of organizational papers paying particular attention to the key task of the renewal of the African National Congress. The intention with the NGC is not to adopt policy. That is the task of the policy and national conferences due in 2022. All the documents, therefore, guide ANC structures to help account for implementation and the impact of the resolutions from the 54th Conference. The list of papers contained in the special NGC Umkhabulo that we are launching today are as follows, and I will then give a brief overview of the contents of each. The list of these documents: balance of forces, international relations, economic transformation and prosperous South Africa, is the national democratic revolution still on track, social cohesion and the national and gender question, building a non-sexist society and the struggle against patriarchy, young people today, mission, challenges and tasks, culture and heritage, strengthening of ANC policy and the strategic repositioning in the post-apartheid era, review of through the eye of the needle document, organizational renewal and unity, developing our human capabilities, South Africa's electoral system, and towards a reconfigured alliance. On the balance of forces, we do an assessment of domestic and global balance of forces periodically and as a necessary process for the following reasons. It allows us to appreciate factors that might delay or provide opportunities for transformation and progress towards a national democratic society. And it also provides us with the tools to identify social and political forces to be mobilized in support of the agenda for change. The ANC adopted a new strategy and tactics document in 2017. This is a medium-term strategic vision, and we're just 24 months into the pursuance of that vision. Although there are changes in the world and the country, it is relatively a short period of time for significant social changes which may warrant a revision of this strategic vision. The assessment of the balance of forces must be evidence-based and must answer whether we have been able to achieve the commands and vision of our constitutional dispensation. What have we achieved? The 1994 breakthrough set off the conditions for the realization of the national democratic society, the programmatic liberation of blacks in general and Africans in particular. This breakthrough allowed for the adoption of a South African constitution based on the principles of a democratic society and rights for all, and to redress the injustices of the past. They dismantled the statutory and institutional organization of racial domination, sexism, autocracy, and they unified our nation state. We transformed state institutions, formal instruments of accountability, and space of organs of civil society to strive. There has been massive progress in state institutions, formal instruments of accountability, and deracialized access to education, health services, electricity, water, and sanitation, as well as increased gender equality. However, 26 years to dismantle over 300 years of apartheid colonialism and patriarchy is but the beginning of that journey. The task for socio-economic emancipation, therefore, remains a work in progress. Despite this short space of time, we have seen the impact of this breakthrough on the motive forces, and the paper highlights the growth of a black middle class with enhanced buying power, better education and skills. Among them is the petty bourgeoisie, the bureaucratic bourgeoisie, some professionals and political elites, as well as the parasitic comprador bourgeoisie. Emergence of a lumpen elements in middle class who operates in various spheres, including in the grey area between legality and illegality, or in fully fledged criminal networks. The paper further assessed the challenges in the 5 pillars of social transformation. The state, capacity and legitimacy of state weakened by deeply entrenched corrupt practices by employees, public representatives and the private sector, and arrogance of some in leadership position. The COVID-19 pandemic tested the capacity of our state and the efficiency of the government. It also provided opportunities to grow our capacity to realize developmental endeavors and expose weaknesses. Economy. Although progress made to extend basic services and reduce poverty, distribution of income, ownership, management, and assets still reflects apartheid colonialism and patriarchy. COVID-19 will result in severe contraction of our economy. Economic recovery plan can provide, therefore, that opportunity for a sustainable economic future and overcome constraints and the fault lines of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Organization. Motive forces are at a low ebb. ANC declining fortunes, squabbles, money politics, corruption, performances in government undermine that ANC support. Failure of renewal will present an existential crisis for the ANC. Battle of ideas. Debates on liberation, transformation, cluttered with simplistic and revolutionary sounding phrases with shallow understanding of strategy and tactics. The ANC has to pay particular attention to ideological work, culture, and heritage as part of this renewal. International. Key issues of global unipolarity, the China, Asia as a new power, globalization and neoliberalism, rising inequality, migration. We need to build trade and security, global institutions. The fourth industrial revolution may leave Africa behind and reliant on national resources. Issues that we need to take forward. Democracy fundamentally shifted the balance of forces in favor of national liberation and transformation. Profound changes on access to education, health services, water and sanitation, as well as pursuit of gender equality. However, we need to continuously improve depth and quality of all these services to ensure equality of opportunities as well as access. Patriarchy still rears its ugly head in the most abominable of ways, as reflected in the incidence of femicide and the persistence of the gender wage gap. There have been profound changes in the class structure of South African society, especially within black community. Emergence of lumpen elements, including in the economy and the political sphere. These are dangerous forces that must be confronted and defeated if the revolution has to make the necessary progress. The ANC, therefore, remains the vanguard of the National Democratic Revolution. The success of the National Democratic Revolution largely depends on our movement's capacity to self-correct and implement programs of organizational and societal renewal. South Africa, as an AU member and the chair in 2020 through our President Ramaphosa, puts high on the agenda the issues of economic integration, silencing of the guns, and the advancement of women and youth. International. This document looks at the key developments and trends in the world, but more particularly in the African continent since 2017, and the implication for South Africa. Key issues of focus. SADC, our role and relationships in the region. African agenda, silencing the guns. African Free Continental Trade Agreement, United Action confronting COVID-19. Global agenda. Role of multilateral organization in that transformation, the World Health Organization, climate change, solidarity, especially with Western Sahara, Cuba, Palestine, and others. Economic transformation and a prosperous South Africa. Is the National Democratic Revolution still on track? Economic constraints. The COVID-19 depression may make inequalities worse. The 2011 slowdown closely related to the fall of international prices of South African mining exports. Domestic factors also contributed to this slowdown, such as the electricity supply grew more expensive and unreliable since 2008. The climate crisis affects agriculture and tourism, more frequent and intense droughts and flooding. State capture and worsening corruption increase the cost of state-owned infrastructure systems and discourage private investment. Government's fiscal and monetary policies were generally pro-cyclical, although not to the point of austerity. Deep inequalities and high joblessness led to contest over policy priorities and strategies which reduce private investment with investor uncertainty. Inequality and poverty limit demand for basic consumer products, making it difficult to develop labor-intensive manufacturing jobs. Various long-standing economic, legal, and social and political relationships encourage continued dependency on mining and discouraging growth in other sectors. The state does not have the ability to take over businesses. It can, however, regulate. Deep inequalities in our society make it difficult to achieve agreement on economic policy. Different state agencies have mandates that align with different constituencies. Both cabinet and the presidency need far greater technical capacity and stronger systems. Responses that we need: a sustainable package to revive overall economic growth, as we have seen with the release of the President's Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. Measures to improve economic opportunities for working people on a significant scale. Improved management of business needs an expectation to renew investment and job creation. Increased support for organizations that promote social mobilization in working class communities, such as labor unions and other constituency-based organizations, the Presidential National Youth Service, and the community work programs. The minimum wage should increase at least 1.5% above inflation annually. Stakeholders, especially unions, communities of faith, and NGOs, should be helped to improve monitoring as well as enforcement. Access to elite educational institutions from primary to tertiary should be improved, especially for low-income learners, including quotas for places without fees for learners from low-income households. Larger companies should be encouraged to invite unions to take part in their boards of directors and to expand employee and community ownership. Resolution is required on the matters of communal land and security of tenure, bring communities into the broader development of South African society with its respective diversities, with particular emphasis with regard to access by women. Greater capacity in the presidency to prioritize and coordinate the process, monitor, especially to unblock implementation, and when necessary, strengthen continually as implementation proceeds. A focus on actual or potential core industries rather than niche products. Greater capacity for departments to develop proposals to address the main constraints on competitiveness and growth in specific value chains with realistic objectives, targets, and alignment across the state. We need a social pact to manage contestation between stakeholders. All parties should take a long-term view, recognizing that inclusive growth will benefit all of us. On social cohesion and the challenges of building a non-racial and non-sexist society. This paper provides an analysis of history and the challenges that we face today, global, political, and economic changes, and new COVID challenges. It traces ANC approaches to the national question, reconciliation, and gender equality. After 26 years of democracy, our society is still plagued by violence, racism, xenophobia, sexism, our country remains divided and unequal. Poverty and inequality massively impact especially on black women and youth. We've made progress with laws and policies, representation, access to education, housing services, though little progress with youth unemployment and not enough with GBV and patriarchy. We lack sense of one South African nation with common challenges and united future. We're still divided within with racial and ethnic identities and easily resort to violence, anger, and or prejudice when conflict between groups. Won't overcome massive inequalities, poverty, and unemployment unless most of our society must be on board on this national project to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa, with the National Development Plan as the main plan. We need to face our fault lines, address lack of capacity to implement and to lead and unite our society, organizationally, morally, as well as tackling our weaknesses. We are having a declining electoral support as the ANC, and level of participation of youth and black voters is a big concern. Our responses: the post-colonial, post-apartheid, post-1994 and post-COVID-19 sense of woundedness which different parts of South Africa experience requires the ANC and its government to act as healers in chief, so that we can confront these realities within a commitment to making our land a peaceful and prosperous one. No room for division in leadership. We need to help develop a national identity with cultural diversity, reigniting the RDP of the soul, and to celebrate progressive elements of our heritage. We need to build social compact with business, government, labor, and the unemployed on the basis of commitment to growing the economy, enabling an ethical and capable state, and providing a durable social net. The ANC-led government must consolidate the social compacting we've been seeing, especially in response to COVID-19. Social dialogue and conflict resolution require compromise and the conviction to communicate difficult decisions to our constituencies, decisions that may be unpopular in the short term, but they may lead to mutual benefit in the long term. At the center of social compact must be the involvement of our young people and the notion that we want them to inherit a better South Africa. We need to carve out a role for all sectors of society, civil society, intellectuals, traditional leaders, faith groups, youth, women, culture, arts, sports, LGBTQI+, people living with disabilities. Building a non-sexist society, the struggle against patriarchy. Progress since 1994 on women's rights, ownership of housing, access to services, closing the gender gap in education. Women today are majority in terms of those who complete high school and tertiary education. Reproductive rights, access to health care and contraceptive, as well as maternal and child health care. Women now have 44% of employed, but in lowest paying jobs. Women still a majority of poor and the unemployed in South Africa. In the last few years, young people drove widened definitions of oppression and discrimination and added more focus on rights to gender identity, sexual preference, and the rights of LGBTQI+, and the intersectionality of these rights. Gender-based violence, attitudes, and objectification of women, as well as role in family, representation in economy and politics, are symptoms of enduring patriarchy. New challenges like climate change and COVID highlight the vulnerability of our women to the impacts of all this disaster, as the poorest, most rural, and the responsible for children and care for elders, and the disabled, most indebted, and therefore least resilient. What needs to be done? We need to free girls and women from chains of prescribed roles to full equality in family, society, and opportunities to study and to work. The total transformation of gender relations and power needs the active mobilization, conscientization, and participation of men. Focus on policies that will free women, expand early childhood development, access to water and electricity, public transport, healthcare, community, and safety. We need to actively include women in all consultation, community-based and sectoral approach. Strengthening the capacity of ANC, its government and civil society for gender mainstreaming, gender-responsive planning, budgeting, monitoring, evaluation, and auditing. Prioritize economic participation in jobs, health, education, housing and land tenure, sexual and reproductive health, land ownership and tenure, gender-based violence, and stereotypes. We need to identify issues that need specific interventions around issues of women's participation in sectors like engineering, women and land ownership, harmful religious and cultural practices, GBV, and consult and form partnership with stakeholders to find solutions. We need to build and strengthen international partnerships with other countries and local organizations. On youth, this paper indicates that the majority of our population and large percentage of the voting constituencies are young people under the age of 35. The future of the ANC, therefore, depends on its ability to create a young support base. Young people vary according to class, race, gender, education, rural, urban, political exposure. We therefore need to identify politics as become more popular than bigger view change as systemic. Youth who are politically active are broadly divided into the more left or woke youth, as we have seen with the Fees Must Fall and others. Young people did not experience apartheid and therefore have no automatic loyalty to the liberation movement. Inequalities in our society based on race have led to the rejection of the notion of a rainbow nation concept by many young people and perceptions of the 1994 sellout. Rise of young, black and radical feminists who organized to emancipate women and defeat patriarchy, system of male dominance. Young people are very clear on issues that affect them and have strong ideas on solutions. The ANC, therefore, must speak with them directly, not over them, on the issues that young men and women, such as unemployment, education, a silent substance abuse epidemic, feelings of alienation, marginalization and isolation from leadership, influence, status and power in society, social cohesion, and climate crisis and implications for their future. ANC is losing support among students and intellectuals, as well as urban youth, not attractive to them. Young people's perception of the ANC and government is growing negative, and their view is that government and the ANC is not taking young people seriously and lack representation of youth in leadership dominated by older people and an organization with corrupt patronage network and gatekeeping. Issues for the NGC. We need to take swift steps towards organizational renewal, not just for current generation, but also as an investment into the future. We need to address issues affecting young people and revive the ANC Youth League as an organizing force for changes that are being faced by young people. We need to get the support of young people. ANC needs to govern effectively with integrity, honesty, deliver services to people, and be honest about failures. We need to reconsider how we organize members, supporters, and relate to civil society. We need to reach out to young people in their spaces on the issues that they care about. We need to organize and work with them, respect their input, encourage their leadership, increase influence and participation of young people in decisions and policies that affect them. We need to support progressive causes that are being pursued by young people. Arts and culture, linkages of ANC policy and strategic repositioning. Since democracy, we focus mainly on political, social, and economic policy and strategy issues, leaving arts, culture, and heritage behind. ANC's position on culture and heritage during the transition period has mainly been ad hoc, tentative, and poorly expressed in its policy documents. Uncertainty over ANC's intellectual property rights to most of its own material. Some of the flagship projects that we have identified, the Southern African Liberation Heritage Route, as a symbolic appreciation of the SADC frontline state support in the struggle and also provide story of solidarity amongst various liberation movements. Liberation Memorial Multipurpose Center to accommodate all liberation material and become a learning and research center and a point of collecting and coordinating repatriated liberated archives. So we're very happy to see last night the opening, the Thabo Mbeki Memorial Library that was unveiled last night. Establishment of a National Heroes Acre to memorialize all those who fought against colonialism and apartheid. Our attention, we need the repatriation policy for mortal remains of South Africans abroad and those in the country to be brought to their places of birth. Archives policy must support the return of archival material scattered throughout the world. We need to give direction to access, use, and intellectual property rights. Indigenous knowledge system and language policy to develop and promote that project of indigenous knowledge systems from health, agriculture, craft, and home consumer industries and indigenous languages, and promoting and mainstreaming the policy of Ubuntu. On organizational renewal, warning signs of the sins of incumbency since 1997, but we have reached a critical point where it poses a challenge to the very character of the ANC, an existential crisis. Our last conference in Nazareth identified two sets of problems: distant, inward-looking ANC, unable to be agents of change and connect with our communities, the motive forces, out of touch with constituency, members and leaders not schooled in ANC values and goals. This is reflected in the ANC's declining electoral support and standing in society. ANC increasingly losing credibility and trust because of performance in delivering a better life for all. With corruption and state capture, we are not seen to be managing state resources for the benefit of our people effectively, efficiently, and economically. Although we are committed to building a development state as an instrument of transformation, our people are beginning to doubt whether the ANC still has good plans to create jobs and change the economy. On the existential crisis, there is a realization that unless we renew the ANC, its very character, politics, and values that make it the African National Congress of years is in grave danger. Two possible scenarios. We may become so weakened that the ANC is just by one of those forces in South African polity, rather than the leader and major role player that it has occupied for almost 109 years. Fragmentation of the polity, forced into coalitions or opposition. But was still a major and even leading force. But the unity of purpose, of values and standing is compromised to such an extent that the very character as a people's movement, a disciplined force of the left, an agent of change, a thing of the past. And it veers between populism, reaction, and conservatism, maintaining the status quo and presiding over a failed transition. What are the core tasks to reverse this? We need to represent and organize and mobilize communities and the motive forces and win their support and elections. To win and use state power by building a capable developmental state, to better the lives of our people and advance towards the national democratic society. We need to make policies with broad support for them, implement them through the state, and monitor implementation and the impact on our people and transformation. To transform society through our programs, values our integrity, exemplary leadership in society by winning the battle of ideas in a convincing manner. We need to select and deploy capable leaders and public representatives with integrity, with capacity, and with the correct orientation expertise to drive the implementation of our programs. We need to develop cadres who are schooled in our values and policies with capacities to be the agents of change wherever they are deployed. Achievements since the 54th conference. We have established the Or Tambo School and beginning to massify the online school. New online membership system has been launched. Adoption of a mass political education, and we've started implementation. Branch manual has been updated. Online membership system has been launched. Dispute resolution structures in place under the DSG. During COVID-19 period, we are now using online political education that has been expanded. ANC cloud reporting steadily has been built. Won back some of the ground lost during 2016 local government elections that we've seen in the recent by-elections. We are now advancing, preparing for the 2021 local government elections. Our alliance structures meet and joint campaigns against racism, commemoration events have begun. Challenges. Capacity of the state and implementation of programs towards a national democratic society. Economic transformation still remains a major challenge. Not done well on the integrity and anti-corruption issues. Exposure of corruption through Auditor General's report, may his soul rest in peace. Zondo Commission, both real and perception. ANC is being perceived as being soft on some of these issues. What has to be done? We need a decade-long sustained program of renewal and implement the 54th Conference resolution, vision of a renewed ANC, address leadership commitment and critical mass for renewal, tackle and draw line in the sand against corruption, reform of leadership selection processes, accountability and performance framework, review task and role of leadership collectives, membership system and recruitment. Reviewing through the eye of the Nigel document. This document indicates that the ANC has grown massively in membership as well as in experience, and yet we have failed to improve the quality of our cadres in government and the organization. Conditions in our society, government and ANC are much more challenging. Negative behavior is growing. If we want faster progress in transformation of our society, we need much better capacity to lead and manage the state and the organization. The purpose of this renewal process is to redefine how we find the best cadres to lead us and remain a revolutionary vehicle to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. Challenges. It has become very easy to become a leader in the ANC. Depends on the slate process and loyal to a faction. There is a lack of revolutionary morality and good ethics, and many disregard our core values. The sins of incumbency are affecting us, being in power for so long that we take power and people's support for granted with arrogance, nepotism, factionalism, and corruption. Political opportunists have infiltrated and seized certain parts of the organization, driven by their own careers and need for power and access to resources. This organization is in crisis and has difficult choices to make. Either let the downward spiral continue till we reach and hit rock bottom, or take a decisive, sharp turn upwards and work towards a new beginning. What is to be done? The ANC needs to recommit itself to the revolutionary morals and ethics, the values, the culture, and the character and identity of the African National Congress. We must root out the rot within the organization and get rid of rogue, corrupt, and counter-revolutionary elements and adopt a practical framework to renew and regenerate the ANC. All structures should discuss changes to the eye of the Needle document related to the kind of leaders we need, the principles we should follow when electing leaders, to include all forms of patronage as well as use of money in the lobbying process. What should the attitude of the ANC be on all these negative issues? How can we modernize selection and election criteria and processes? Building human capabilities. The document indicates that the critical task of ongoing transformation, 26 years of democracy, is the investments that we make in human capabilities. Our problems still run deep, as the RDP said in 1994. South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. Unemployment rate has increased from about 7% in the mid-1970s to 13% in mid-1990s and 25% in the late 2000s and to more than 29% in 2019. 13.1% of our households are still living in informal dwellings. Our population, though, has increased by 1.3% per annum over the period 2002 to 2018. The number of households increased by 2.4% per annum over the same period. More than one quarter, which is 25.7% of households, consisted of a single person, whilst 2% of households contained 3 or fewer members. Life expectancy at birth, whilst on the increase, is at similar levels of 1990 at 63.9 years. Child malnutrition rate is even worse than countries such as Ghana, China, and Chile. Challenges. Gross national income per capita for females and males has declined between 2014 and 2018. 2/3 of learners attend no-fee schools, but lack money still contributes to the dropout rate. Household connected to electricity has improved from 76.7% in 2002 to 84.7% in 2018, with a decrease in the use of wood 20% to 7.7%, and paraffin from 16.1% to 3.1% over the same period. Provision of water slowed down notably after 2014. Percentage of households with access to an improved source of water grew from 84.4% to a staggering 89% between 2002 and 2018. Access to improved sanitation grew from 61.7% to 83% between 2002 and 2018. 8 million needs in the country, young people aged between 50 and 35 years who are not in education, no employment, no training, who have gone up from 2.8 million to 41% in 2010. Only about 30% of young people go on seek education after basic education. What needs to be done? We need to make the 4th industrial revolution happen by focusing on connectivity, smart industry, and big data across all sectors. We need a skills revolution with a renewed revolutionary curriculum, improve links between ECD, which is early childhood development, basic education, and higher education, focusing on technical skills. A capable state that unlocks the capabilities of our citizens, activist government, and a knowledge-driven professional public service. We need to implement the district development model. A capable organization with system to engage society effectively, monitor its policy decision with ability to support and hold its cadres accountable. Reconfiguration of the alliance. The document presents summaries on the nature and character of our alliance formations and their historic missions, and thus those of the alliance. It also gives a common program of working for transformation of our country into a national democratic society. Structural reconfiguration of alliance and different options for consensus seeking. Electoral system reform. This paper looks at the implications of Constitutional Court judgment, the evolution of our electoral system and the constitutional provisions, the options for a synchronized elections, including looking back to the recommendations of the Slabet Commission. A festival of ideas. This special edition of Mkhabulo that we are releasing today, with the detailed papers for ANC analysis structures as well as to the public. We are also giving analysis and engagement from ANC structures across the country, as the DSG has outlined. Also deliberate on programs and engagements with various sectoral formations and groups across the country. Also, it's a mechanism for proposals and contributions from branches will be set up on the cloud and processed by our drafting teams. All sectors and South Africans are invited to be part of this festival of ideas. I thank you. I hope I didn't give you a slot death by PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Comrade Jeff. The DSG has presented the statement of the National Executive Committee on the launch of these discussion documents. Comrade Jeff has given you a brief on what is contained in those discussion documents. We were expecting to be done with this briefing by no later than 11:45. We can just take a round of questions if they are there, just to allow members of the media, considering because there's going to be a range of briefings that is going to be provided by chairpersons of various subcommittees, just to deepen the understanding of society and our own structures on these discussion documents. The floor is now open for questions. Okay, Ntebo. Looks like we only have one question today. That's good.
Okay,
No. Let's deal with all the questions, because Comrade Amos, can we also just check if we don't have questions that have been raised on our Zoom platform? Because DSG, there are others who have joined the briefing virtually. Okay, we've got Ntebo, we've got Spamandla, Lizega. Okay.
Okay, my name is Ntebo. I'm with the NGC. You'll pardon me if I missed it, but I wish I could know when exactly are you going to have an NGC, but because I didn't hear that when I didn't see the statement. Number two, this document, I've read it as the head of policy was reading it, and I followed everything. But almost 90% of the concerns that are raised in the document, that is the concerns that have been raised, I think over and over again, in the previous conferences, previous NGC, previous NEC meetings. For instance, the social distance between the motive process of the leadership, corruption, young people not being organized, even today the ANC not having the ANC league. What difference will the NGC bring to the ANC in terms of addressing all the challenges that have been raised here in this document? The challenges that have been raised in previous NGC meetings, in previous conferences, that the ANC failed to, or maybe couldn't address over those previous meetings. What difference will the NGC bring to?
Okay. Spamandla.
I see the statement and the documents are focusing much on young people, something that has been said before, but to that we give an interim policy, and one of the things that has been said by young people is they don't identify with the leadership of the ANC, they don't feel represented in the leadership of the ANC. They say they are being led by old people. I'm sorry to use that phrase, but that's what it is said. Is the ANC seriously considering having young people as part of their top leadership structure? I'm not talking about the ANC being an other party, the top leadership of the ANC. That's number one. On the issue of corruption, which has been covered before, maybe you touched on the issue of the zone commission as well. Can you just know comment on what happened with your former president there walking out of the zone commission, and if you will please, DSG, if you can indulge us, I saw a letter that you sent to us written by you requesting lawyers and professionals to assist in the prosecution of apartheid and the crime. Have you lost faith in the NGC prosecution of the crime?
Okay. Lizega.
Lizega from how you regulate that, how you police that. I also wanted to find out from you, I don't know if the SABC did touch on my question, but just to find out if the Integrity Commission, you say in the document that the Integrity Commission must be, the recommendations must be respected, but I just wanted to find out, I mean, this is something that you have been saying, you say that it's national conference. What is there that can change? Is there anything that you have in this discussion document to propel a change in how you treat your Integrity Commission? And also the role of black lawyers in your fight to privately prosecute the above-state suspects everywhere. Can you tell me, I spoke to black lawyers yesterday.
So, Lizzie, I don't want to stop you, but I was going to request that we try and ask questions that are related to policy discussion documents. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Because a possibility exists that other journalists may also want to ask questions that were not part of the discussion documents. And that will then overshadow, because the ANC convened this press conference for a specific purpose. It wants to elevate its policy documents. Please. Yes, I don't want to take away your right to ask questions, but we had convened this briefing for a specific purpose. Are we covered? Newsroom? Okay. Bongani and DSG.
When is the National General Council going to take place? That decision will be taken by the meeting of the National Executive Committee that is taking place the next weekend. But from the policy perspective, as DSG and myself involved in this process, we expect that the NGC will take place sometime between April and May, but the exact date will be determined by the National Executive Committee. I'm sure the follow-up question will be, how are we going to convene? That question as well that has not been asked, will be answered by the NEC, but we envisage a hybrid system of virtual as well as presence in some form or the other. But all these will be dependent on the progress we are making in fighting against the COVID-19 pandemic. It is correct that many of these issues have been raised previously, but I think the difference today is that there is a broad consciousness and commitment from the ANC to deal with these issues effectively. I think the waking call has been the decline in our electoral support. So I believe, as the person involved in the policy, that the ANC has to wake up and deal with these matters differently, but more decisively for the betterment of the organization. On the issue of young people, I think mainly their criticism, even though is directed towards the ANC in general, but has been the issue of the ANC Youth League. They felt that is not talking to their matters. So we are bringing on board many young people into the upper echelons, even in preparation of these documents. When, as Paul has highlighted, when he convenes specific media briefings with various sectors of these 11 discussion documents, you will see a lot of young people who are the originators and presenters of this document, especially on the issue of youth, social cohesion, etc., etc. On the issue of corruption, the same question, the same answer that I gave to Debo goes for you, Pamela, that I believe that the ANC is going to be more decisive this time going forward because of the crisis that the organization is facing at the moment. I also believe that the first step will be taken at the meeting of the NEC next week, On the issue of the Zondo Commission, I don't think this is the forum to answer those questions. The DSG will deal with the issue of the PLA and black lawyers. On money politics, in the document on organizational renewal, as well as through the eye of the needle, we go into details of how we can be able to deal with these matters. As I've said, that we are facing two scenarios. Either we can allow this process to go on until we hit rock bottom, or we make a sharp turn upwards to improve the fortunes of the ANC. I think that's all for now.
Thank you very much. A few months ago, we met with the Foundation for Human Rights, represented by Yasmin Suka and Hanif Valley. It included the family members of a number of victims of apartheid crimes. The Timol family was represented, the Kalata family was represented, and the family of the late comrade Portia was also represented. These families told us that they have struggled on their own to bring the cases of their individual family members to the courts, and they've used their own personal funds in most cases. The foundation itself has tried to raise money for these court cases. We then decided that we should try to see what we can do to assist, and we included in the discussion the Minister of Justice in his capacity as a member of the National Executive Committee, and also the Deputy Minister of Justice, Comrade John Jeffries, who has a long history and understanding of what took place during the TRC. The ultimate problem that we identified was that there are some 340 cases that had not been dealt with, and the TRC had recommended that there should be investigation, possibly prosecutions, but investigations at least. The families and the Human Rights Commission explained to us that they have had a long history of conversations with the national prosecutorial authorities, and that they feel there's help needed. So we agreed amongst us that what we would do is we would approach university chancellors, vice chancellors, to request any historical papers and documentation for information that they might have at hand, books that were written about certain cases and so on. It's a long process. Secondly, that we would throw out a cry for help to the legal fraternity in the country, in particular what we considered might be the more progressive legal fraternity in South Africa, to say, if there's any lawyers who can contribute some of their time voluntarily to assist the families in the investigations and moving towards finding prosecutable cases that can go to the NPA. So there's no question about not having confidence in the NPA, but it has taken 25 years, Comrade Jeff, for this matter to come to any point. And so this was really an activism perspective on our part. I must say that I've been taken aback a bit by the negativity in the social media coming from some quarters, which we expected, because of course it would be a direct assault on those people who support the silencing of the apartheid atrocities, that we mustn't talk about them. We feel very strongly that we need to, and that we need to assist these families. They approached us, they have a right to approach the ANC, and the ANC is going to ask for help from lawyers who might be able to assist us. It is not a black mark against any institution of the state. It is simply saying this requires activism. We left it alone after the TRC sat. We didn't do much about it. And even if it is 25 years later, those families still feel the pain. And they have a right to be assisted, and it is on that basis that we agreed to set up a technical team, which is led by our legal person in the ANC office, Krishnaidu, and he has brought in some other lawyers. We've also included our general manager, Comrade Phoebe Potgieter, and we have included, amongst others, in the technical team, in his capacity as an activist, the Deputy Minister of Justice, to assist us. So this is not there's no mystery here. This is straightforward activism, and we hope that we will be able to have your support as the media on this project. Thank you very much. On the Integrity Commission, let me go into a little bit of detail. So we've had huge discussions about this notion of step aside. And the concept, the thing that is facing us is a challenge. Number one, there is a concept of political morality, which is implicit in the Constitution of the ANC, Section 25, which says that if you've been charged, you voluntarily have to make a decision to step aside based on your own political morality and your conscience. Then we had a meeting, an NEC meeting, and we went a bit further. And the NEC said those who are charged must step aside, full stop. And that was based on the number of cases that were present in the country. But what then happens is people go to court. And the courts, for example, in the VBS matter, which is very famous, as you know, in that matter, the courts decide that the names of the people that had stepped aside must be struck from the document, which was the original document that was used by the Integrity Commission of the ANC to ask them to step aside, which was a South African Reserve Bank report. Names are struck off. This puts us in a bit of a problem. In KZN, 2 people step aside. One is accused of murder. The case is thrown out of court, but he has already stepped aside. Another person is accused of corruption. There's a huge investigation. He's also asked to step aside, but there's no charge from the authorities against him. So we're stuck with this dilemma of political morality and natural justice, and the justice of the country and the constitution of the country. So what we've now done, we have requested senior counsel to give us an opinion on how we should go forward with this matter of the step-aside perspective, so that we take into account the rights of people in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. We take into account the weight of an accusation, let me put it that way, the weight of an accusation. And we also take into account the unfortunate reality that a number of people are accused so that they can be removed out of the positions that they hold by others who need to fill that positions for their own purposes. It's become a little game that is played, particularly at local government level, which is a very unfortunate reality. And then, of course, there are people who are criminally liable for whatever it is they've done. And the rule of law is that you are innocent until proven guilty. And so we would like the ANC to stay with the political morality perspective, but we also cannot be an ANC that does not take into account justice in the country. A lot of the accusations that come are accusations that are media projected, investigative journalism. It is also stories that are told by people in various parts of the country. I mean, as people who deal with disputes, I can tell you the hardest thing to do is to deal with a dispute, and you have everybody sitting around a table, and as you listen to 30 people speaking, one after the other, in the end you have to conclude, but there's no corrupt person here. There is accusations, because there's nothing that is tangible. It is all, in many instances, in some instances it's very real. Many a time it is circumstantial around a person's behavior, or who they were seen with, or what they did. So we also do not wish to be blaming the media for everything. We're very clear we want a tangible, realistic solution to a tangible, real problem for the country, which is corruption. And I also want to say that it's really the ANC that pushes out corruption. It's the ANC-led government that is pushing it out. It is making sure that people are taken to court properly. What we worry about is losing the cases because of a maladministration, both on the part of the ANC, the accusers, and the fact that the person has rights in the Constitution. And that is a difficult matter. And we're tired of the concept that it's like an ongoing, it's a hay bale. You push it and it just keeps picking up dry grass, but there's no end in sight. So we want, at the NEC, last NEC of this year, this will be the discussion. It will be a big discussion. It will be a difficult discussion, let me say that to you. But it will be a discussion that is based on very good, very senior silk advice in the country. We've asked advice from the best. And we believe that that advice is solid. And that is what we will present to the NEC in first or second week of November. I don't know if Comrade Jeff would like to add to that as a former Minister of Justice.
No.
No, unfortunately, we're not going to tell you. Because we would like to provide that advice to the National Executive
Thank you.